What would you do if your country was dying and the only cure turned out to be madness? Under the scorching sun of the Sahel, a silent enemy marches through Burkina Faso. Dengue fever, a mosquito-borne virus that ravages villages, sending thousands to the hospital. Children can't walk. Adults collapse in the fields. Markets are deserted. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Foreign aid is knocking with conditions. They offer vaccines. In exchange for gold, they send cash, but want control. They promise help, but whisper about mining rights, about medical surveillance, about maps redrawn in conference rooms far from Africa. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young soldier president who stood up against the claws of neo-colonialism, is at a crossroads. Accept their terms and save lives, or dare to take another path. Then came the unthinkable, a proposal to release 5 million mosquitoes, not as weapons, but as cures. Follow us because this is not just another story. It is the future our ancestors dreamed of. Subscribe not to watch videos, but to dream a dream. A free, united, and loving Africa. The virus and the trap. In early 2025, the streets of Ouagadougou echoed not with life, but with the sound of sickness. Chikungunya, once a distant threat, had become a tidal wave, swallowing entire communities. Children once seen running barefoot now lay motionless beneath hospital sheets. Farmers couldn't rise from their mats. Markets closed, and prayer houses filled with the scent of fever balm and quiet desperation. And just when it felt like hope was dying, the world knocked. International agencies arrived. Their doctors flew in. Their diplomats landed. Their promises glittered. But behind each kind word was a clause, a contract, a condition. One agency offered vaccines in exchange for exclusive lithium mining rights in the Eastern Highlands. Another dangled food shipments if the new agricultural cooperatives were placed under joint oversight. One particularly bold envoy proposed temporary international administration of the health ministry, a soft phrase for hard control. These weren't saviors. They were salesmen of sovereignty. Inside the presidential war room, Captain Ibrahim Traoré read each proposal with a stillness that unnerved even his closest advisors. He had been a soldier long enough to know when help came laced with chains. Konat, his chief of security, slammed his fist on the table. They think we're beggars. They think they own the cure. And to many, it seemed they did. The virus was moving faster than local labs could track. Supplies were dwindling. Rumors spread faster than the fever. Whispers of surrender grew louder in the parliament, in the press, in the people. But Traoré stayed quiet. He watched. He waited. Then, one evening, under the humming lights of the palace's situation room, came an idea so mad it made the ministers laugh. Dr. Awa Coulibaly, fresh from Brazil, eyes sharp as her scalpel spoke with quiet defiance. "Release 5 million mosquitoes," she said. The room fell silent. Even Konat blinked. "Are you proposing? We unleash more." Yes, but not just any mosquitoes. These carry Wolbachia, a bacterium that disables viruses. Once they spread, chikungunya cannot. It had been tested in Indonesia, in Brazil, even proposed in Kenya, but never at this scale, never in this chaos, and never under such foreign scrutiny. The science was sound. But would the people believe? Would the world understand? Would his enemies seize the optics and paint him a madman? Ibrahim Traoré listened. He looked not at his generals, not at the diplomats, but at the window toward the flickering lights of a dying city. And he said, "If we wait for them to save us, they will own us. If we act now, we save ourselves and teach Africa that our solutions need no permission." Operation Sky Release. The decision was made that same night. No press conferences, no cabinet votes, just a signed directive in Traoré's own hand. Initiate Operation Sky Release. Planning began before dawn. 3 breeding facilities were commissioned, one hidden near the rice fields outside Ouagadougou, another deep in the valleys of Bobo Dioulasso, and the third disguised as an agricultural research center in the northern highlands. Each facility was built in silence, Portable units made from shipping containers, cooled from the inside, shielded from satellite view, guards posted at every corner, not police, but elite soldiers of the Presidential Guard, instructed to shoot on sight if infiltration was suspected. The mosquitoes would be grown in controlled colonies, fed, monitored, then transported in sealed water drums. The teams in charge, operatives with no names, only codes, scientists trained under cover stories, drivers briefed only on destination, not purpose. And still, Traoré knew the science might work, but optics could kill. So while mosquitoes bred by the millions behind locked doors, the media told a different tale. Radio hosts announced cleanup campaigns, billboards pushed mosquito nets, news anchors discussed fumigation drives, and yet every measure visible to the public was a mask, a veil over the real battle happening in the skies. Foreign intelligence soon caught wind. Encrypted chatter in French and English mentioned a rogue vector control initiative. A leaked email from an NGO worker suggested biological experiments in West Africa. And worse, a journalist from Europe posted a cryptic tweet. What is Traoré really releasing into the air? The clock began ticking. Inside the Situation Room, Colonel Konate warned of sabotage. They'll try to disrupt the facilities, or worse, seize a specimen to prove what we're doing. Traoré nodded and, with calm precision, activated Phase 2. Mobile teams were now armed. Routes changed daily. Releases only occurred at night under cloud cover. Without alerting local populations, every batch targeted a high-risk zone. Kaya, Koudougou, the outskirts of Ouagadougou. The enemy moved too. A drone hovered near Bobo Dioulasso. Foreign diplomats requested emergency meetings. Aid contracts were mysteriously paused. The press grew hungry for scandal, but Traoré refused to blink. In private, he summoned the health ministers of Mali, Ghana, and Niger to a confidential briefing. They left Ouagadougou silent, shaken but aligned. If you believe this is what Africa needed all along, he told them, then say amen in the comments below. Operation Sky Release had begun, and the world had no idea what was coming. Counterattacks and sabotage. At first, it was only whispers, a drop in fever cases here, a missing ambulance run there. In a clinic on the outskirts of Koudougou, Nurse Salimata noticed something strange: 7 straight days without a new chikungunya case. Then Kaya, then the outer wards of Ouagadougou. Doctors, exhausted from double shifts, finally paused. For the first time in months, the wards were quiet, but they said nothing. Not yet. They knew the president's orders. No leaks until data confirmed. But Traoré knew. He saw the reports, each one a whisper of hope. He allowed himself one breath of relief, but no more, because the enemy had not gone quiet. They were repositioning. It began with fire. An explosion ripped through the Bobo Dioulasso facility. Flames licked the night sky. Half the mosquito colonies gone. Elite guards wounded. The breach surgical. Colonel Konate launched an investigation. 2 aid workers had entered the region on forged NGO papers. 2 local officials had signed their clearance. Within hours, both vanished. These weren't saboteurs, Konate said grimly. They were specialists. Worse came next. Satellite images published by foreign media. Charred containers. Sensational headlines. Mosquito madness in Burkina Faso. Then came the local backlash. Opposition leaders rallied, accused the government of playing God. Rumors swirled on social media: mutant insects, livestock deaths, fertility collapse. Traoré did not respond, not immediately. Instead, he doubled down. He appeared on state television, not from the palace, but from a rural clinic. No script, no ceremony, just recovered patients, farmers, mothers, children. I was sick for 3 weeks, one woman said. Then, nothing. My fever broke. My baby is fine. We were dying, a teacher said. Now, we are back. No mention of Wolbachia, no jargon, just living proof. But behind the scenes, the war deepened. A sting operation in Ouagadougou revealed 2 foreign agents posing as health volunteers. Under interrogation, they confessed. Their mission was not to destroy the mosquitoes, but to replace them. A rival mosquito strain, genetically tweaked, designed not to cure, but to control. A slow-release virus, enough to keep people ill. but never well, enough to sell drugs but never offer cures. A billion-dollar ecosystem of dependency. Burkina Faso's program threatened it all. They weren't sabotaging science. They were defending business. Traoré called it for what it was, bio-warfare without bullets. And still, the program continued. Mobile units rerouted, breeding kits airlifted to mountain villages, farmers recruited to help without knowing. Even crickets avoided the fences now. And as the rains came drumming across tin roofs and red soil, they carried something more than water. They carried defiance. Millions of wings took flight, and no one could stop them now. The turning point. Rain. It began with rain. Thick, rhythmic, unrelenting, washing dust from the rooftops of Ouagadougou, filling dry riverbeds, beating drums on tin like a war cry from the skies. And with it, something else moved. Invisible, intentional. The Mosquitoes, Traoré's 5 million wing message, now rode wind and water into every alley, every puddle, every stagnant pool. 3 weeks passed. Zero new chikungunya cases. In Kaya, in Koudougou, in the capital. Doctors checked, then rechecked. Nurses stared at empty beds. Analysts circled numbers in disbelief. The data didn't whisper anymore. It shouted. Operation Sky Release had worked. Not slowly, not partially, completely. Dr. Awa Coulibaly, standing in her lab coat, eyes wet with disbelief, said only, "It's real." But Traoré knew the war was not over. It was only shifting. Foreign powers moved fast. A coalition of pharmaceutical lobbies and donor nations filed emergency motions with international bodies. Unregulated biointervention, environmental risk, violation of ethical standards. Behind those words, panic. If Africa could solve its own epidemics, what else might it reclaim? A convoy was intercepted near the northern breeding site, trucks carrying chemical agents capable of destroying the mosquito population in minutes. The drivers, corporate security contractors tied to agricultural conglomerates. Their orders, neutralize the experiment. But Burkina Faso was faster. Special forces intercepted the convoy, confiscated the chemicals, captured the operatives. Their cover was blown. Across social media, whispers turned to fire. Why are they trying to kill what's saving us? The tide shifted. Journalists, once skeptical, now demanded answers from donor governments. Why had they tried to sabotage a health miracle? Why were African lives being leveraged for patent control? Inside the palace, Traoré stood still. This was his moment. He would not waste it. He drafted his speech by hand. He rejected the Grand Marble Hall. Instead, he walked to the center of Ouagadougou's main market, microphone in hand. No podium, no military guard. Behind him stood not generals but children, school teachers, nurses, recovered patients. He spoke. They told us Africa must wait. Wait for their science. Wait for their permission. Wait for their charity. We did not wait. His voice was calm, but the silence that followed was electric. We acted, not with violence, not with bullets, but with knowledge, with courage, with unity. Cheers erupted. Elders wept. Phones shook in hands. The world was watching. That night, the speech was rebroadcast across Africa. From Dakar to Dar es Salaam, presidents took note. Ministers called private meetings. Researchers across the continent reanalyzed Coulibaly's papers. Something was waking, something old, and something entirely new. The question was no longer whether it worked. The question was whether Africa would be allowed to keep it. The aftermath and the new map. The rain did not stop. For days, it washed over Burkina Faso, carrying more than dust. It carried a new dawn. Health bulletins continued pouring in. 0 cases, then regional drop-offs, then international inquiries. Suddenly, the same organizations that dismissed the operation began asking for data, for study. They claimed, but Traoré had learned. He didn't release the results through a Western journal. He gathered African epidemiologists, public health leaders, and ministers and held a continental summit in Bobo Dioulasso. He showed the data. He walked them through the process. No Western intermediaries, no permissions, and the room erupted not in applause but in resolve. Ghana requested technical support. Mali volunteered joint labs. Tanzania offered logistics. Rwanda pledged funding. An alliance was forming not just against disease, but against dependence. The backlash came fast. Diplomatic threats, frozen aid, a resolution tabled at the UN to ban large-scale bio-releases without international review. But the wind had changed. Cameroon, Senegal, Uganda all abstained. South Africa voted no. A quiet rebellion. Then came the leaks. Whistleblowers from corporate labs revealed trials of profit-oriented mosquito strains. Their purpose? To maintain low-level illness. The story exploded. Western media could no longer ignore it. The New York Times ran the headline, "Mosquitoes that saved a nation." By then, the narrative had left their hands. African universities requested curriculum updates. Grassroots campaigns pushed for sovereign science. Students wore mosquito pins as symbols of pride. And Ibrahim Traoré, he returned to the palace window. Below, the city danced. Children ran barefoot through warm puddles. Drums beat like memory. The revolution had not been televised. It had flown. 5 million wings. 5 million chances. Burkina Faso, latest news. The virus was gone. Captain Ibrahim, latest news. He had not just fought a disease. He had reclaimed the right to decide how Africa saves herself. If this story moves something in your chest, don't scroll past. Like, share, speak, subscribe, because they hid our history long enough. Let's speak our future out loud. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next story, the kind they still don't want you to hear. Africa Rise.